Good evening, everybody. Tonight I have a little box with me, and in my little box I have some incense. So I'm going to burn some incense for you tonight. My little incense box back. Good evening, everybody. How are you this evening? Let me just turn the music down. Turn the music off completely. There we go. Okay. Let me just get myself comfy. Good evening, everybody. So tonight we are going to be reading from the 86th night onwards, because I had a little boo-boo last week, for those of you who may or may not have realised it. But I missed out a night, so on Saturday night, Saman had to read the 82nd night again, as Joanna had forgotten to do it, and it started at the 83rd night. But tonight, we are going to be starting on the 86th night. I hope that's correct this time. And what I thought I would do for you today is just give you a little recap, because there's going to be a lot going on today that kind of wraps up a number of the stories that have been going on over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And if you remember, at the beginning of this tale, more or less, we had the Queen Abrizar, who was the daughter of the King of Greece, and she decided she wanted to get away from her family. So she left with, at the time, Prince Shah Khan, who took her to his father in Baghdad, and unfortunately his father took such a liking to her that he actually decided, not realizing that she was a queen, I believe, he decided to rape her, and she became pregnant immediately. And then she escaped Baghdad, and she escaped his father, and she left Shah Khan behind and went with a slave to go back home to her own country. And unfortunately, just after she'd had the baby, on the road, the slave murdered her. So Princess or Queen Abrizar was murdered. And meanwhile, the king had 2 children. So the king of Baghdad, who had raped Queen Abrizar, had 2 children by, I believe it was her sister or daughter of another king from Greece, Sophia. And that was Nuzat and Zau al-Makan. And Zau and Nuzat had their own little adventures, because they disappeared off to go and discover the world. And as they were discovering the world, they had a lot of hardships. But now, to wrap that story up very fast, because we really don't have that much time, they are back home only to have discovered that their father has died of food poisoning. And Zau al-Makan is about to be an appointed king of Baghdad, and his brother Shah Khan, is going to be king, or is king already, of Damascus. And they want to find out who it was that poisoned their father. They don't know yet until they talk to the wazir Dandan, and the wazir tells them that an old lady came by with 5 damsels to the palace, and she was very much revered by the king, and he liked her very much. And they told him stories every night, and then she disappeared off to go on long journeys. And when she would disappear off, she would tell him to fast for a number of days and then take a special drink that she gave him and made for him. And that would cure and cleanse his soul for Allah, and so on and so forth. So she did that, right? And he did that, and he followed exactly what she told him to do to the letter. And now we're going to find out what happened in the rest of the story by reading I think it's the 86th to the 89th night, because again, they're only short stories tonight. So now, when it was the 86th night, Shahrazad said, "It has reached me, O auspicious king, that the Wazir Dandan continued to tell Zau al-Makan, quoth, thy sire to the ancient woman, when she demanded the handmaids of him, I have a Greek slave called Sophia, by whom I have been blessed with 2 children, a girl and a boy. But they were lost years ago. So take her with thee, haply she may get the benedictions, and, belike the invisible controls will sue Allah for her, that her 2 children may be restored to her." "Thou hast said well," replied the old lady, "for that indeed was her grievous want. Thy sire gave not over finishing his fast till the old woman said to him, O my son, I am going to the invisible controls, so bring me Sophia. Accordingly, he summoned her, and she came forthright, and he delivered her to the old woman, who mixed her up with the other damsels. Then she went into her chamber, and bringing out a sealed cup, presented it to the Sultan, saying, On the 30th day, do thou repair to the hammam, and when thou comest out, enter one of the closets in thy palace, and drink what is in this cup. Then sleep, and thou shalt attain what thou seekest, and peace be with thee. Thereat the king was glad, and thanked her, and kissed her hands. Quoth she, I commend thee to Allah's care. Whereat quoth he, And when shall I see thee again, O pious lady? In very sooth, I love not to part with thee. Then she called down blessings on him, and departed with the 5 damsels and the queen, whilst the king fasted after her departure other 3 days, till the month ended, when he arose and went to the hammam, and coming out, shut himself up in a closet of his palace, commanding that none should go into him. There, after making fast the door, he drank what was in the cup, and lay down to sleep. And we sat waiting till the end of the day, but he did not come out, and we said, Perchance he is tired with the bath, and with watching by night and fasting by day, wherefore he sleepeth. So we waited till next day, but still he did not come forth. Then we stood at the closet door and cried aloud, so haply he might awake and ask what was the matter. But nothing came of that. So at last we lifted up the door, and going in, found him dead, with his flesh torn into strips and bits, and his bones broken. When we saw him in this condition, it was grievous to us, and we took up the cup, and found within it a cover, a piece of paper whereon was inscribed, Whoso doeth evil leaveth no regrets, and this be the reward of him who playeth traitor with the daughters of kings, and who debaucheth them. And we make known to all who fall upon the scroll that Shah Khan, whom he came to our country, seduced our queen Abrizar. Nor did that suffice him, but he must needs take her from us and bring her to you. Then He sent her away in company of a slave who slew her, and we found her lying dead on the desert sward and thrown out to wild beasts. This be no kingly deed, and he who did this is requited with naught but what he merited. So do ye suspect none of having killed him, for no one slew him but the cunning witch, whose name is Zat al-Dawahi. And behold, I have taken the king's wife, Sophia, and have carried her to her father, Afridun, king of Constantinople. Moreover, there is no help for it, but that we wage war upon you and kill you and take your country from you, and we shall be cut. And there, I don't know if you can see this. Here is a picture of the king, the sultan, lying dead after they had found him in one of his closets. So, and ye shall be cut. In the event to the last man, nor shall a living soul be spared by death, or one who bloweth fire with his breath, save he who cross and worshippeth. When we read this paper, we knew that the ancient woman had beguiled us and carried out her plot against us, whereupon we cried aloud and buffeted our faces and wept more when weeping availed us naught. And the troops fell out as to whom they should make sultan. Some would have thee, and others would have thy brother Shah Khan. And we ceased not to dispute about this for the space of a month, at the end of which certain of us drew together and agreed to repair to thy brother Shah Khan. So we set out and journeyed on till we fell in with thee. And such is the manner of the death of Sultan Omar bin al-Nu'man. Now, when the Wazir Dandan had made an end of his story, Zau al-Makan and his sister Nuzat al-Zaman wept, and the chamberlain, who wept also, said to Zau al-Makan, O king, weeping will avail thee naught, nor shall aught profit thee, but that thou harden thy heart, and strengthen thy stress, and stablish thy sovereignty. For verily, whoso leaveth the like of thee is not dead. Thereupon Zau al-Makan gave up his weeping, and caused his throne to be set up without the pavilion, and then commanded the army to pass in review order before him. And the chamberlain sat by his side, and all the armour-bearers behind him, whilst the Wazir Dandan and the rest of the emirs and grandees stood each in his individual stead. Then quoth King Zau al-Makan to the minister Dandan, Inform me concerning my sire's treasures. And he replied, I hear, and I obey. And gave him to know of the late king's hoards and monies, and what was in the treasury of amassed wealth and jewels, and acquainted him with other precious things. So Zau al-Makan opened the hand to the army, and gave a sumptuous robe of honour to the Wazir Dandan, saying, Thou continuest in office. Whereupon Dandan kissed the ground before him and wished him long life. Then he bestowed dresses on the emirs, after which he said to the chamberlain, Bring out before me the tribute of Damascus that is with thee. So he was shown the chests of money and rarities and jewels, when he took them and parted them all amongst the troops. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. I'm going to take a sip of my tea, and then, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue. Now, when it was the 87th night, Scheherazade said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Zau al-Makan ordered the chamberlain to bring out before him what he had brought of the tribute of Damascus. And when he was shown the chests of money and rarities and jewels, he took them and parted them all amongst the troops till nothing was left. And the emirs kissed the ground before him and wished him long life, saying, Never saw we a king who gave the like of these gifts. Then all went away to their tents, and when it was morning, he gave orders for marching. So they marched for 3 days, till on the 4th day they drew near to Baghdad. When they entered the city, they found it decorated, and Zau al-Makan, the Sultan, went up to his father's palace and sat down on the throne, while the emirs of the army and the Wazir Dandan and the chamberlain of Damascus stood between his hands. Then he bade his private secretary write a writ to his brother Shah Khan, acquainting him with all that had passed, from first to last. And he concluded, As soon as thou hast read this letter, make ready thine affair, and join us with thine army, that we may turn to holy war upon the infidels, and take man boat for our father, and wipe out the stain upon our honour. Then he folded the letter, and sealed it with his seal ring, and said to the minister Dandan, None shall carry this letter but thou, and it behoveth thee speak my brother fair, and say to him, If thou have a mind to thy father's kingdom, it is thine, and thy brother shall be viceroy for thee in Damascus. For to this effect I am instructed by him. So the wazir went down from before him and made ready for his march. Then Zau al-Makan bade set apart a magnificent house for the firemen, and furnished it with the best of furniture, and long is the tale of that fireman. Presently Zau al-Makan went out chasing and hunting, and as he was returning to Baghdad, one of the emirs presented him with blood horses, with beauteous handmaids, whose description the tongue evades. One of the damsels pleased him. So he went in unto her, and knew her that night, and she conceived by him forthright. After a while, the Wazir Dandan returned from his journey, bringing him news of his brother Shah Khan, and that he was then on his way to him, and said, It were fitting thou go forth to meet him. Zau al-Makan replied, I hear, and I consent. And riding forth with his grandees, a day's journey from Baghdad, he pitched his pavilions there waiting for his brother. Next morning appeared King Shah Khan amid the army of Syria, a horseman of might, a lion fierce in fight, a prow and doughty knight. As the squadrons drew nigh, and the dust clouds came hard by, and the troops rode up with banners on high, Zau al-Makan and those with him pushed forward to meet Shah Khan and his men. And when Zau al-Makan saw his brother, he desired to dismount, but Shah Khan conjured him not to do on this wise, and himself footed it, and walked a few paces towards him. As soon as he had reached Zau al-Makan, the new sultan threw himself upon him, and Shah Khan embraced him and wept with great weeping at the twain condoled with each other. Then they mounted and rode onward, they and their troops, till they reached Baghdad, where they alighted and went up to the royal palace, and there they passed the night. And when next morning came, Zau al-Makan went forth and bade summon the troops from all parts and proclaimed a holy war and a razzia. They then awaited the coming of the levies from each quarter of the kingdom, and everyone who came they entreated with honour and promised him all manner of good, till in so doing a full month had sped, and the fighting men flocked to them in a continuous body. Then Shah Khan said to Zau al-Makan, "O my brother, tell me of thy history." So he told him all that had befallen him, from first to last, including the benevolent dealing of the firemen with him. Asked Shah Khan, "Hast thou requited his kindness?" And he answered, "O my brother, I have not rewarded him as yet, but, inshallah, I will recompense him whereas I return from this raid." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. And then, dear friends, we have one final night to read tonight, which is the 88th night. I'm just going to take a sip of water or a cup of tea again, and I'll be with you in 2 seconds. Okay. I hope you're all still sitting comfortably. It's just about to get heated up, I promise you. Now, when it was the 88th night, Shahrazad said, "It has reached me, O auspicious king, that Shah Khan asked his brother, Zau al-Makan, 'Hast thou requited the fireman for his kindness?' And he answered, 'O my brother, I have not rewarded him yet, but, inshallah, I will recompense him, whereas I return from this raid and find time to do so.' Therewith Shah Khan was certified that his sister Nuzhat al-Zaman had told him the whole truth, but he concealed what had passed between them, and offered his salutation to her by her husband, the chamberlain. He sent him back her greeting, calling down blessings on him, and inquiring after her daughter, Kuzia Fakan, to which he replied that the maiden was well and in the best of health and safety. Whereupon she praised Almighty Allah and gave him thanks. Then Shah Khan went to his brother to take counsel with him for the departure, and Zau al-Makan said, "O my brother, as soon as the army is complete and the Arabs have come in from all the parts, we will march forth." So he bade make ready for the commiserate and prepare munitions of war, and went into his wife, who was now 5 months gone with child, and he put under her astrologers and mathematicians, to whom he appointed stipends and allowances. Then he set out 3 months after the arrival of the army of Syria, and as soon as the Arabs were come in and the troops were assembled from all directions, and, as he fared forth, he was followed by the warriors and the united host. Now the name of the general of the Daylam army was Rustam, and that of the general of the army of the Turks, Bahram. And Zau al-Makan marched in mid-host, and on his right was his brother Shah Khan, and on his left the chamberlain, his brother-in-law. So the squadrons broke up and pushed forward, and the battalions and companies filtered past in battle array till the whole army was in motion. They ceased not to fare on for the space of a month, and each body dismounted at its own ground, and there rested every week 3 days, for the host was great. And they advanced in this order till they came to the country of the Greeks. Then the people of the villages and the hamlets and the poorer took fright at them, and fled to Constantinople. But when King Afridan heard the tidings, he arose and betook himself to Zat al-Dawahi, the same who had contrived the stratagem and had travelled to Baghdad and had slain King Omar bin al-Nu'man, and who, after carrying off her slaves and Queen Sophia, had returned them all to her native land. Now when she had been restored to her son, the king of Greece, and felt herself safe, she said to the king Hadub, "Cool thine eyes, for I have avenged by blood the shame of thy daughter Abrizar, and have killed Omar bin al-Nu'man, and have brought back Sophia. So now let us go to the king of Constantinople, and carry to him his daughter, and acquaint him with what hath happened, that all of us be on guard and prepare our forces. And I will fare with thee to King Ifradun, lord of Constantinople, for I opine that the Muslims will not await our attack." Said Hadub, "Tarry thou till thou draw near our country, that we may make us ready meantime, and assemble our power." Accordingly, they took to levying their forces and preparing for war, and when the news of the Muslims' advance reached them, they were prepared for defence, and Zat al-Dawahi had preceded them. Now when she and her son arrived in Constantinople, the king of kings, Afridan, hearing of the approach of Hadub, king of the Greeks, came forth to meet him and asked him if it was him and the cause of his visit. So Hadub acquainted him with the cunning doings of his mother, Zat al-Dawahi, how she had slain the Muslim king and recovered for him Queen Sophia, and had said, "The Muslims have assembled their forces and are on their way to attack us. Wherefore it behoveth that we two join hands in single band and meet them." Now King Afridun rejoiced in the return of his daughter and the killing of King Omar bin al-Nu'man, and he sent all countries seeking succour and acquainting the folk with the cause of slaying the Muslim king. So the Nazarene troops flocked to him, and 3 months were not passed ere the army of the Greeks was complete, beside which there joined themselves to him Franks from all their lands, French, Germans, and Ragusans, and those, by the way, were people from Dubrovnik, with the men of Zara, Venetians, Genoese, and all the hosts of the yellow faces. And those, by the way, might be Russians. And when the gathering was at its full, earth was straitened on them by reason of their multitude. Then Afridan, the great king, ordered a march. So they set out and ceased not to defile through the city for 10 days. They fared on till they reached the Wadi height, Al-Nu'man, a broad-sided vale hard by the salt sea, where they halted 3 days. And on the 4th were about to set out again, when news came that the army of Al-Islam on their pressed, and the defenders of the faith of Mohammed, of men the best. So they halted on it another 3 days, and on the 8th they espied a dust cloud which towered till it walled the whole land. Nor was an hour of the day past ere that dust began to drift and was torn to shreds in the lift, and pierced through the shades the starry radiance of lance and the white levens of blades. Presently there appeared beneath it the banners Islamitan and the ensigns Mohammedan. The horsemen urged forward like the letting loose of seas that surged, clad in mail, as they were mackerel-back clouds which the moon enveil. Whereupon the two hosts clashed like two torrents, on each other dashed. Eyes fell upon eyes, and the first to seek combat singular was the Wazir Dandan, he and the army of Syria, numbering 30,000 bridles. With him were the general of the Turks, and the general of Dailam, Rustam, and Bahram, amid 20,000 horse, behind whom came the men from the shores of the salt sea, clad in iron mail, as they were full moons that passed through a night of o'ercast. Then the Nazarene host called out on Jesus and Mary, and defiled the cross, and they heaped themselves upon the Wazir Dandan and those with him of the Syrian host. Now all this was in pursuance of the stratagem devised by the ancient woman Zat al-Dawahi. For before his departure, King Afridun had gone into her and asked her, "How shall I do, and what plan shall I pursue? It is thou hast caused this great distress to me." And she answered, "O great king and mighty Cohen, I will teach thee a trick which would baffle Iblis, though he summons to his assistance all his grisly hosts." And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. So, I am not going to tell you what happens in the battle of the King of Constantinople and the King of Greece and our friends Nuzat and Shah Khan, the two brothers. You will have to find that out tomorrow from Saman, who'll be reading for you. And it's interesting stuff. For somebody, things don't go to plan, as often happens in a war situation. Dear friends, it was an absolute blessing reading for you again tonight. I hope you are all keeping very well. For those of you who are still, thank you very much for the hearts. Thank you so, so much, everybody. For those of you who are still in some form of lockdown, I hope you're coping okay. I hope it's going to levy up a little bit very soon, and you're going to be able to go out and meet friends and see people. And if you're already able to do that, do still take care of yourself, because I believe this thing is still a thing. So we still need to be wearing our masks and making sure we always look after ourselves and our loved ones. So from me to you, I wish you many blessings and take care of yourselves. Have a beautiful day or afternoon or evening. And if it's your nighttime too, like it is here in Vienna, then I wish you a very good night. Many slums. Good night, everybody. Take care.